Well, it's good to get into a game week. The players are really excited about backing off on practice and hitting each other and looking forward to playing in a game. So still a big week of preparation for us. It's very important that we stay focused and have a good week of practice in order to get ready for Saturday. But as I mentioned, we're really excited about it. I like the attitude of our team. I think we've made some really good strides in the last 4 weeks. And I'm excited about watching them play, seeing some of the new guys get out there and see how they perform. And obviously we've got a few players that have played quite a bit. Looking forward to those guys getting back out there. So just looking forward to a week of preparation.
What are you going to do during the game, Mike? It's been a couple of 3 years since you didn't have all those offensive duties.
Yeah, listening to both sides of the ball and be involved in special teams. I thought the other day about how it would actually factor in on decisions, but because I was calling plays, I was tied in pretty good with 3rd and 4th down calls, but can contribute a little bit more in the special teams area. It gives me more time to think about that prior to a certain group going on the field.
Mike, as far as Jamie Blatnick, Victor Johnson, are you expecting them to play this week, and what is kind of their status?
Well, from a legal standpoint, obviously Jamie's situation has changed, and there's still some out there on Victor's situation. I'm gathering information on it. I'm pretty caught up to date with where we're at with Jamie, and we're going to have those discussions with him this week, and then make the decisions on what we're going to do with his options for Saturday.
What about Blatnick, though? You said you had the information on him.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Jamie is who I was talking about.
Will either one play Saturday?
Well, we're going to make those decisions. I've got all the information on Jamie, and I have there's still some out there on Victor, and so I'm waiting until I get all that before I make a final decision.
Mike, have you had much of a chance to look at what Washington State may do, or is there with this being the first game, quite a bit of mystery within?
Oh, I think there's mystery on both sides, but obviously we have a pretty good feel for what we think they'll do in all 3 phases. Usually 40 or 50% of that's correct going into the first game. So it's important that you're good at what you think's important, your offensive scheme, your defensive scheme, and special teams, and take care of your own business and go out and play hard.
Mike, do you guys have a #1 wide receiver yet? And in this offense, do you need a guy to really step up and become that top threat?
Oh, I wouldn't say we have a #1 guy. We don't have anybody in the category of a Des Bryant or Rashawn Woods. We have a number of guys we feel like are very capable of making plays, and I think one of the advantages we have in this system is we can spread the ball out.
Mike, you've run the ball about 2/3 of the time, basically the last 4 years. Now that's changed. How different is it for you as you get into a game week, thinking about how drastically different your offense will be compared to what you've done in terms of the pass run distribution?
Well, it'll be different. Just have to see how it plays out. I know that the offensive staff has a pretty good idea how they want to handle it, and I've got a pretty good idea of how I think it should go. And we're going to be in somewhat of a learning phase in how we handle run-pass situations based on where we're at in the game. It'll be a little different in that area than it has been in the past. But we'll play to our strengths depending on personnel or the situation in the game.
How pleased are you with Brandon's decision-making? I assume he's got the arm to make any throw, but the decisions he's making in this offense?
I think he's making good decisions at this point, but we'll know a lot more after he's played in some games. And the question came this morning about how much will you know about your young players that haven't played after the first game. We'll know a little bit, know a lot more a month from now when they've played in several games and a little bit of fatigue sets in and guys get beat up a little bit. You'll find out a lot more about your team.
Mike, since the last time you talked with us, with the media, a lot of your practices have been geared toward operation, efficiency. You know, the walkthrough on Saturday you typically do the week before. With a lot of young players and a new coordinator on the offensive side of the ball, are things as smooth as far as operations going into the first game as you want?
Well, I'm comfortable with our offensive system and the coaching staff on that side of the ball. But you just don't know a lot about where you'll be with your players until they play in games. But I like the way our players have practiced. I think they understand the system. But it moves much faster on game day, as we all know. And playing out there in front of 60,000 people is much different than being on a grass practice field.
Mike, I think you were 23, you might have been 24 when you first coached a college football game. Can you imagine 3 or 4 years, 2 or 3 years after that, 26 or 27 quarterbacking again? Which is what Brandon, he's going to be 26 Saturday, and later in the year he'll be 27.
I could see it until they're about 30 years old. But it's still amazing to me that some of these guys, that, particularly in the NFL at the age they are, competing and playing and taking some of the physical punishment that they take. Brandon's in good shape. He works hard in the weight room, and so physically I think he'll be maybe better off than what a younger player would be. And there's a formula out there for the male body. I think it's 26, 27, 28 years old is when they really mature. I've mentioned that before. I've read that before about Olympic athletes, and so if that's true, then he should be in really good shape and should be as strong as anybody that's out there on the field. I know that we see a big difference in players that are 21 and 22 compared to when they come in as 17, 18-year-old freshmen, putting aside the weight room, just the ability for their body to develop. So it should be to his advantage.
Mike, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered on this team this season. What's the number one question in your mind that needs to be answered and could be answered this week?
Well, our guys got to learn to play together and compete. We had a number of players for the last 2 or 3 years that carried this football team, and they were returning starters and they were veterans, and it was important to them. But these guys have paid a price. They've worked extremely hard. They worked hard in the spring. They worked very hard in the summer on their own. We've had good practices in preseason, so they've earned the right to win. But they have to go out and play hard, and they have to play together. There'll be a lot of good plays, but then there'll be some plays that aren't as fun. And so they have to rally and come together as a group and compete. And so that's really where we're at with some of the younger players. Athletically, they're going to be fine. They need to learn to play together and compete.
You talked about Washington State having a good feel for what they do. Is the biggest difference between them a year ago and this team possibly that defensive tackle that they got?
Yeah, and I say we have a good feel. I mean, it's a guess. You just go off of what's happened. But he's a good football player. But obviously it's hard for me to speak for what's going on in their program right now. But they'll be different just from their coaching staff being there and their routine and then their off-season conditioning and their preseason conditioning. And it all changes considerably the longer you're there as a staff. And so I'm sure they're going to feel much better about their approach to this game than they did when we were out there a couple years ago.
Are you a coach that thinks the climate conditions, you took your team to Seattle early a couple of years ago. They're coming the opposite way. They haven't had a lot of heat. This could be a steamy game on Saturday. You think that's different?
Yeah. Well, it's they're talking about being 89 degrees, and at 6:55 we're in shade out here in most of the field. So I'm not sure that'll be as big a factor if it was a 2:00 game and the sun was on the field the entire game. So both of us have to play in it. I'm not going to deny that some teams prepare in more heat than others. Just like altitude, the question gets brought up when we go play at Colorado about the altitude, and I think a lot of that's mental. If you're a mature team, you're a tough football team, I think you can play anywhere. So our players certainly don't need to rely on the weather being an advantage for us on Saturday.
A lot of people have talked about all the starters that you've lost on both offense and defense, but with the talent level that you have, the recruiting classes that you've had, is it possible that you guys won't be as affected by that this season as maybe you would have been in some seasons past?
Well, I think we're farther along right now athletically than we were when we took this over. But I said earlier this year that I think the players that are going to compete for us will progress quicker than the group that just left. And I think that's because our staff's established and the program's established and the routine, and we changed offenses. We need to pick up some wide receivers in the future to make this thing run at full speed. But we have a plan for being efficient with where we're at right now. But it's hard to predict how young kids are going to play. The only thing I'm going to say is I think this group will play better earlier than the last group that was here.
From a freshman class standpoint, is this the most competitive group you've ever seen come in? I mean, right off the bat, the way they handled it?
This is a very good freshman class that we have right now. But a lot of the competition is instigated because they have a chance to play on Saturday. In the last couple of years, we had so many returning starters that there wasn't as much competition to get on the field. And as you know, we play approximately 75 plays on defense in a game, and the ones will be out there 50 or 60 of them. Your twos are going to get 15, 20, 23 plays based on how they play. So they're going to get on the field. If you're a freshman and you know you have a chance to get on the field from a two standpoint, then the competition goes up. Because the greatest thing there is competition at any position. And there's a number of spots that young people or young players had a chance to get in for the first game, and so that's why there's more competition.
I feel about your depth. Mike, you comfortable with that? First game?
The depth?
Number twos?
Yeah, we're young at a lot of spots, and again, I'm comfortable with the athleticism in the future. I don't know that I'm ever comfortable with not having experienced players there. I'd like to have more depth at defensive tackle spot. I've had to say that for a number of years. I would feel better if we were too deep at that position. We're still young there in a backup role, and so I've always been concerned about that. Running backs, wide receivers, defensive backs are young, but they're guys that are talented, and I think they'll gain ground quick.
This is Mike Gundy, press conference on 1340 Fox Sports.
I'm glad that didn't come from up there. Made me a little nervous at first. Everybody good? All right. That's pretty easy. You guys let me off light.